entrepreneurs, and welcome back to Working Genius for Entrepreneurs. I'm Paula Ferris. This series focuses on a groundbreaking model and assessment which has revolutionized the way that faith-driven entrepreneurs look at work. Now, during our first session, Patrick Lencioni provided us with an overview of the 6 types of working genius. Now, most personality instruments and tests, they help people better understand how they're wired, but what they fail to do is explain how that all fits together with others in the process of work. Now, Working Genius solves this problem. And not only do individuals walk away with a greater understanding of the type of work that makes them thrive, but Working Genius provides teams with a better way to think about their dynamics, their projects, meetings, and even the way that they hire. In this session, Patrick provides some practical applications for all 6 working geniuses. Now, some of you may have already completed the online assessment. It's not a requirement, but taking it will help you better understand how to fully apply your 2 strongest geniuses and how to just avoid the 2 frustrations that completely drain you. Our first session was something that you could use for your full team, but today we're talking about you. Patrick specifically addresses some of the things you might wrestle with as an entrepreneur and with those in leadership around you. How do you build the right combination of working geniuses on your team so you can compete and win? We need to not only look at the person and the role, but also be mindful of what God has brought together as a group. How do we make sure the right members of the team are in the right places? Let's watch.
Okay, one of the things about Working Genius that I think maybe is something to start with. I mean, maybe I should have explained this earlier, but it has to do with 2 things that are not good in our lives. And there's a place for them in our faith. But when it's unnecessary, it's not good. And I'm talking about guilt and judgment. Okay, now, guilt has a reason. Sometimes we do the wrong thing and guilt brings us back because we know that's not the right thing. But God does not want us to feel guilty about things we shouldn't feel guilty about. And many of us have wounds and issues and we feel guilty often. Judgment, we want to have good judgment, but judging others, Jesus calls us not to do that. We're supposed to have grace and mercy for them, even in truth, telling them the truth, but not in a place of condescension or judgment, because we all have need for correction. But when we don't understand our working geniuses, St. Francis once said we need to seek to understand more than to be understood. When we don't understand others or ourselves, we fall into unnecessary guilt and judgment, which I think is a terrible thing. We feel guilty about what we're not good at. My first job out of college, I got what was considered at the time the best job in America out of college. Literally, there was a book written that year, and the company at the top of the list, somehow by an error in judgment on their part and interviewing, they hired me. And I did not succeed. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like pretty much of a failure. And I thought, well, I'm a fraud. I didn't work hard enough. I don't care enough. And it wasn't until 2 years ago, 35 years later, that I realized, oh, I failed in that job because it was set up for my working frustrations. They were looking for somebody that loved doing what I hated doing. But I felt guilty, like I had failed. What I had failed to do is understand what the job required and what I was, and match those up appropriately. So avoiding that kind of guilt is a really good thing in life. Judgment is when we work with somebody and they don't have a skill set, and so we make what we call the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error is when we make a judgment about another person and we attribute it to their character. So some guy cuts you off in traffic on the freeway, and you think, what a jerk that guy is. Man, he is a horrible person. I can't believe he could be so rude. I bet his wife or his friends and the people he works with think he's a jerk, and I would hate to be around that guy. The next day, I cut somebody off in traffic, and I go, oh, I'm having a bad day. Sorry about that. I was lost. I didn't know where to go. So I give myself the benefit of the doubt, but I judge him as having a character issue. We do this in life all of the time, and it's really quite tragic, okay? So how does this work in the world of work? Well, I once had a situation where a client used the Working Genius just after it came out. And the CEO told me this powerful story. He had a woman on his team, and she had done a great job. She was a cultural fit, okay? And which is the most important thing. She had also turned around the sales department. She loved customers, and she made her numbers. She got things done. Then the market changed, and they had to come up with a new strategy. And she couldn't do it. She tried, and she was just at a loss. And the CEO said, I was getting ready to fire her. I thought, I need a salesperson who can understand this kind of stuff. They did the Working Genius. She said, I have no wonder or invention or discernment, which is where a new strategy would come from. I'm an enablement and tenacity person. I love on the customers and I make my numbers, which is what they needed. And they looked and they found a guy in the marketing department who had discernment and invention. They brought him in, and in 3 hours, he helped them come up with a new strategy. And the CEO said, I almost fired her because I thought she was dumb or lazy, when in fact, I didn't realize she just didn't have those geniuses. Now, we do this all the time in our lives where we say that person doesn't care enough, or they're not bright enough, or they're not even trying, when in fact, we just don't understand. I know this with my children. Some of them do really well in school because they have certain qualities. Some, their personality does not lend itself to doing their homework early and on time. And I, because of this 2 years ago, I'm now looking back at them and at the ones I still have at home and thinking, I need to look at them differently because God gives all of us different geniuses. So let's avoid unnecessary guilt and judgment, and let's really understand people so that we make the right decisions in love and grace in a way that helps everyone. Okay, now I want to talk to you as entrepreneurs to look at how the 6 types of working genius can help you in your role as a leader of an organization and of people. A lot of people ask the question, what's the right combination of geniuses to be a leader or an entrepreneur? And the answer is very clear and very simple, and that is the self-aware type. That's what it is. It doesn't matter what your letters are. Any type can be a great leader, a great entrepreneur. As long as you know what you are, you lean into that and you surround yourself with people who fill in your gaps. And I've worked with CEOs of companies that said, I don't have discernment, so I'm gonna put together a strategy based on numbers, but I need to go to somebody else around me to say, hey, does this mesh with your gut feel? And there's other people that say, I don't have tenacity, a lot of ones, and you think, oh, well, you have to have tenacity to be an entrepreneur, and it's like, no, you have to have enough people on your team that are gonna keep you going in that. So it's really about self-awareness. Now, what do you do with this, though, if you're leading an organization? Well, first, start with yourself and understanding this, share that with your team, but then do it with your leadership team and help them figure out what their working genius is. It's very simple, it takes 10 minutes. And then for teams, we have this thing called a team map, which displays an entire leadership team or any team, what their geniuses and their frustrations are and their competencies are. And you can look at it and immediately spot the gaps. And you're gonna look at it and you're gonna say, oh my gosh, we have one person on the team with tenacity. We're burning them out. And because every time something needs to get finished, we go, you're gonna do this, right? Or there might be somebody with wonder who never gets used for anything and we're missing it. So I wanna tell you a great story about a company I worked with. It was not a small organization, but every leadership team is relatively small. And this was a company in the Silicon Valley. I don't know if they had 10 or $20 billion in revenue. It was big and they'd been around a long time. But they had been behind the market in technology for 10 years. But they had install-based customers and old technology that was still good. So they were getting by, but their board wasn't happy, the leadership team wasn't happy, the CEO wasn't happy, and they couldn't figure it out. And they were just seen as laggards in the industry. So they did the working genius, and this was right after it came out, and I thought there was a chance they were gonna go, we don't care about these assessments. Took them 10 minutes, they get the results, they look at it, the CFO, one of the most practical, hard-driving guys on the team, looked at the results and said, this is our problem right here. And people said, what? And he goes, look, none of us have wonder as a genius. In fact, it's a frustration for almost all of us. So nobody on the team naturally said things like, I wonder if this could be better. Where's the market heading? He goes, we have been behind and cranking and just getting things done, but nobody here asks the big questions. We never take the time when we're together. So if we don't hire somebody with that, or more importantly, carve out time to do that, and really get intentional about wondering where the market's going, what do our customers want? Is this really the best we can do? If we don't do that, we're never gonna make it. Something else happened. Then they said, oh look, we only have one person, technology company, with invention as a genius. Only one. And it was their lawyer. Nobody in technology, nobody in marketing had invention as a genius. And they were like, no wonder we haven't come up with anything new. So they said, what are we gonna do? And they said to the lawyer, hey, how would you like to take over new technology development and acquisition? And he goes, that would be great. I never thought anybody would ask me. I'm a lawyer. They found a guy and gave him the best job he'd ever had. And they were gonna fill a gap that they didn't even know they had until they realized what was going on. But here's the thing I love. A year later, I went back to their website to see what was going on. That guy was no longer their chief legal counsel. They pulled him out of the law department completely and had him do full-time technology stuff. And that, here's a guy who went to law school and thought, I guess this is what I'm going to do. But they said, no, your genius is actually invention, and we're going to create a job where you can do what God made you to do. So on your team, you're going to look at this, and immediately you're going to identify gaps. You're going to identify areas that you're really strong. You're going to see areas. You're going to be able to explain difficult situations that happened in the past that you might be feeling guilty about and go, oh, no wonder that didn't go well. No wonder we got frustrated at each other. It was really about that. In the last 2 years, my wife and I have come to understand ourselves better on our team because we realized that neither of us had tenacity, and we were always getting on each other for, I thought you were going to pay the bills. I thought you were going to follow up on this. And we kept thinking the other person should do it, and we realized neither of us, we had grace for each other. We could actually pursue other options. And that's what happens on your leadership team as well. But it starts with you understanding what you're great at and what you're not great at, and going to your team and saying, you guys, I obviously stink at a few things. They're going to know it, but hearing it out of your mouth is going to give them permission to step up and fill the gaps.
Sometimes what paralyzes us most when making personnel changes is how. How do we make those changes? How do we move people to different places, ensuring that we're doing it without guilt and judgment? We are not meant to do any of this in a silo, and we cannot build a business alone. That's why we often say that we want you to come for the content and stay for the community. Finding friends and allies is a key to your success on the road ahead, which leads me to invite you to one of Faith-Driven Entrepreneurs' 8-week foundation groups, as well as the ongoing entrepreneur groups. You'll be connected in a small group of like-minded entrepreneurs who meet either in person or online, entrepreneurs like you that just get it. It's all free, there's no cost, no catch, just connection. Everything you need to know about the groups can be found on the website faithdrivenentrepreneur.org. Also, you may have noticed that there's a bonus episode for this series. As connected as you and I might be to the team in the office, our team at home, it is equally as important. And figuring out our working genius within our marriages can lead us to being better spouses at home and better partners at our work. Now, Patrick shared some of what he's learned about working genius and how it impacts our marriage. Our friends, John and Ashley Marsh, kick off that segment in the bonus section. And if you like what you see, you might consider going deeper in the content provided with a new marriage series for entrepreneurs. We know that the life and marriage of an entrepreneurial home, it is unique. We wear a bunch of hats: board member, bookkeeper, mom, dad, husband, and wife, and it can get really confusing in that unpredictable schedule and journey. So what we've done, we put together a few episodes to dive into some of those unique opportunities and challenges with the Marshes. You can check out that bonus section to get a taste of it and learn more about that study. But the important thing, again, we don't want you to walk this journey alone. The entrepreneurial journey is difficult enough. It's filled with challenge, opportunity, and yes, triumph along the way. So if you have gone through this on your own, we want to really encourage you to consider diving into groups. I'm Paula Ferris. Thank you for joining this session, and we'll see you next time.